So I'm going to give you a sense. In these lectures I give on my main channel, I talk about that human beings are experiencing like a multiplayer online game in front of their eyes, one outer physical realm.
Mm-hmm.
Behind their eyes, everybody has their own inner realm, their own private inner life.
Mm-hmm.
So my intent is to, when I speak to people, have them share about their inner life, which nobody else can see other than them. So
Okay.
that's the main intent. And the intent is to also figure out imagination and what does that even mean to you experientially throughout your life. And but before that, would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So so I run a YouTube channel called The Spiritual Walks. And I called it that way because it's to symbolize a journey, a walk. And during my journey, what I actually used to do is I'd go to a park or somewhere in nature and take a walk. And that was my sort of let's say spiritual input or the effort I exerted in regards to spirituality. I found that quite meditative, and that's where I sort of had most of my realizations, most of my insights about life. And so I decided, you know what, why don't I take a bunch of people with me on these walks? And so I decided to record these talks. Now, when you look at the videos, they're not always outside because I do live in the UK and the weather doesn't always help for it to be outside. But I guess it's the symbol behind it is what what matters at the moment.
Right, right. So it's that's so interesting, man. So it started with the direct experience of walking then, right? So you started walking and you felt the insights coming that way or something like that? Was it
Yeah, yeah. So um I used to live with my parents, and I eventually had got an internship in Manchester, which is roughly, 3.5 hours drive away. So I grew up in London, and so when I made this move, I moved to a place that was a big mystery to me. It was the first time moving out. I didn't know anyone. It was, I had to sort of learn and adapt to the new way of living, let's say. And then all of a sudden, I had a huge amount of free time to myself. Because when you cut out the social life, when you cut out a bunch of things, the overhead responsibilities of living with parents and family, all of a sudden, I found that I had so much free time. And in that free time, I didn't want to just be indoors. I wanted to go out. And so there was a park nearby, and I'd go out and take a walk in that park. Um, and and yeah, it taught me a lot of things and a lot of insights about life from a spiritual perspective. I was always curious and always was interested in the truth of life, to understand it on a deeper level. I found it quite interesting that not many individuals are as interested as I am in trying to figure out life, even though most human beings don't know what's going on either. They've been given a narrative, decided to subscribe to that narrative. Um, in the beginning, it used to be frustrating to me and very odd, but over time I've come to reconcile with that, and just decided to just take these walks. But then I realized there's actually a bunch of other people that are also interested in this, and so hence I started recording these talks or recording these insights and shared them on this platform.
right, right. So, one thing I'm trying to figure out is that, I mean, let's say some people, spirituality, it has a meaning for them. Their parents are spiritual. So when they're young, it has like some meaning, right? I'll give you an example. For example, myself, I was born in Tehran, Iran, and
Mhm.
my mother, very religious woman. My father, had certain spiritual experiences, even closer to non-dualism and whatnot, right? And so I'm trying to say that these ideas were I was thinking about these at a young age. Was it similar for you, or was it you weren't caring for any of this, the idea of God or anything, and then suddenly it made sense or whatnot? You know what I'm saying? Is that
Yeah, yeah, I understand what you mean. But actually, I grew up in a very religious household as well. I can't say that my parents had specific religious experiences that really stood out to me. But I grew up in a religious household. I was taught all the lessons, all the teachings that come with it, all the different figures that were look up to, and there's a lot of it just did resonate with me. However, I just couldn't understand um, why that would be the case. I wanted to investigate further. I didn't feel that there was much satisfaction in just occupying and taking on a belief that I am born into, because I realized that had I been born in a different religion, in a different household, I would have just perhaps walked into that um, culture, religion, and upbringing. So I kind of wanted to look
right? Right.
in a more neutral way, where I am not as much identified with what I'm growing up with, not identified with my previous conditioning. And so taking those walks for me was I was taking everything off, not in the literal sense, but I was taking everything off and leaving everything behind. It's very similar to Pablo Picasso's quote when he says that when I start painting, and I'm paraphrasing, when I start painting, I take everything off and there's no one there doing the painting, in the same way Muslims take their shoes off before they enter a mosque. And so that
Right.
was really that process for me when I was taking these walks. It allowed me to look at all of these teachings, the religious upbringing I had, and also other religions and other teachings, from a perspective where I am a lot less tainted by my upbringing and my conditioning.
Right, right. Let me tell you something honestly. When
Mm,
I came across your videos, I actually felt that um a lot of people who go towards I'm going to ask you about this, what spirituality means. How do you see, for example, the concept of a god in Islamic religion, and then the concept of ultimate reality, where you
mhm,
find it in, like, Vedic thought and all of this, right? Somebody had once told me that, like, the difference between polytheism, sorry man for the noise, the polytheism and monotheism is somebody saying everything is God's, Gods, and then everything is God's, God, comma S. So everything belongs to God in the Islamic view, but in the Vedic or yogic view, everything is the presence of God,
mhm,
right? Now I'm kind of diving into this a bit quickly, but um, as an Islamic individual, the ideas of spirituality, I felt as a young kid that there's a restriction there, and I feel you've somehow managed that. Somehow you, out of the many people online, this thing of, like, the restriction of the cultural program and then your actual experience. I feel you've somehow figured that out. So if you can share a little about that.
yeah. So the truth is that when we this what I realized in my journey is that when I look at religion, automatically I can't help but look at what everyone else is doing as a part of that religion. Now, what everyone else is doing, it doesn't necessarily mean it's in alignment with what the religious teachings are. So, for example, and I mentioned before that there used to be this frustration before, and that's because I was trying to align myself with everyone else, but I couldn't, because there was a misalignment between the belief of that I've been given along with the mainstream, and my own realizations, my own insights. Now, what was truer to me and what had a higher level of conviction was my direct recognition and my direct experience compared to the belief that I was given. And the belief that you are given is always someone else's direct experience somewhere down the line, but it's being passed on to you in the form of a story or a form of, let's say quotes or hadith in the sense of Islam. So I also learned that each human being has a unique perspective. If you bring an object, whatever that object may be, if you present 1,000 individuals this object, every one of these individuals will have a unique perspective to that individual. No two individuals will see that object in exactly the same way. And so that meant that the truth itself, even if you present someone the truth, the absolute truth of existence in a box, every human being will interpret it differently and can own and has no option but to interpret it, unless they bypass the conditioning that does the interpretation. So where I'm going with this is an example in Islam. Islam, the core of Islam is Tawheed, which means oneness, right? Now, the general Islamic narrative, and when I say general Islamic narrative, I'm referring to the people that believe in Islam, is
Right.
that it's monotheism, okay? Believing in one God. That's the general narrative. But actually, even if you look into Islam itself, into its core, Tawheed just means oneness, that everything is one, and it cannot be anything other than one. It cannot be anything other than whole and complete. And that doesn't just mean the religion, it means every aspect of existence is one. Because even under Islamic terms, for you to try and say that God is up there and I am here, that can actually be seen as shirk, because you are defying the very core of the Islamic teaching of oneness. Now there
Hmm.
is two. There is God and then there is you. So there's a separation in the matter. And then we are all taught these different chapters, Surah Al-Ikhlas, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, say that God is one. If God is one, then how can we have an identification of our own that is outside of God's? So therefore,
Right, right.
therefore, we must have some sort of tainted or an illusory perspective of life, right? And the Quran will constantly go and visit these matters. So, for an example, there's a verse in the Quran um, that goes, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ فَأَيْنَمَا تَوَلَّوْا ثُمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَسِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ, which means that for God is the east to the west, and wherever you turn, there is God's face. God is all encompassing, all knowing. So there's constant indications towards this actual oneness that one is to realize and recognize as a truth, but it's tainted and sort of has is warped by the belief systems that God is there and I am here, by the conditioning of growing up, and also by the way God is taught and portrayed. Don't do this because you'll go to hellfire. Don't do this because you'll do that. And so it's been flipped upside down. There's a set number of laws and rules that you are given to follow.
Hmm.
If you don't follow these, then you are going astray. You are not a good Muslim, let's say. However, having this realization of this core oneness that reality is, naturally will realign your perspective to knowing that doing this is not is haram, is forbidden. But in that sense, it's not that it's forbidden now, it's more of a, I shouldn't be doing this because it's pointless, right? In the grand perspective, right, that isn't
Hmm.
tainted by your conditioning. It's pointless for me to go and steal something, right? If I go and try and steal something from someone else, it means that I am trying to empower my own identity. And if I'm empowering my own identity, which is an idea of who you think you are, if I then try to do that, I'm implying that this identity is more important and starts to overshadow the truth that's taking place now, right?
Right, right. The conditioned identity, you mean?
Yes, yes. And so really even these rules, right, of what is halal, what is haram, what is forbidden, what is a good deed, what is a sin, if you really observe these, every sin has some form of a impact on your life immediately. And that perhaps is the judgment. That is the punishment that you get
So the
from it.
karma is like the hellfire.
Yeah, so different schools of thought will describe it as karma, but I'll give you a more direct approach to this. So if you go and steal something, it means that whatever you are stealing is above all. Whatever you are stealing in that moment is more important than everything else. So if you identify and value something that is anything in existence that is more important than everything else in existence, then you have now narrowed your view, and it's as though you are viewing life through a keyhole. It's very narrow, and and when you look through a narrow telescope, that's all you see. You can't see the surroundings. Okay, and that kind of constricts your life in its entirety. It constricts your perspective. Okay, and that is where a lot of suffering comes from. It comes from the constriction. However, when you look at a good deed that you have to do is a pillar of Islam, for an example, zakat, giving alms to the needy, and charity, right? What that does is actually, on the contrary, something that I possess, something that I own and I have identified with, I am now giving away. I'm giving away a part of myself. And what that means is I'm dissolving this image of who I am slowly. And over time, as I keep doing this, eventually giving is effortless, right? Because it's not so important what I think or what my, monetary goals are, what my, how big the house I need to live in is, or whatever, right? It's not so important anymore. And so that also has an impact on your perspective. Your perspective is less warped by the narrow focus and the identification and the conditioning.
Right, right. Man, I have so many views on what you've said. One, there was this view I had, this bunch of arguments. Maybe you can even help me out with these. One, when I was younger, when I was in Iran, I could see that because politics was in religion was in the politics, you had to know religion. You had to understand. So as a young kid, I was like, yo, what is everybody praying to? Do you see what I mean? Imagine you're born in a nation and everybody's praying towards something inconceivable. Do you understand? Something they can't see, right? Something that's not, they can't conceive of, they can't put a shape. So I was like, how can you worship something inconceivable conditionally? Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm,
So with this view, now let me tell you, after years of giving these, like having my YouTube channel and giving talks, I had a Discord community. And Hassan, in this Discord community, people came talking about oneness, spirituality, everything is love. Everything I would say, I'm this guy telling people, hey, we got to advance civilization. And they would say, yo, it's all one. It's already advanced. Everything's already done. And for me, there was a part of me where I was like, the oneness hasn't gone anywhere. The human experience is new. So many people go towards spirituality and they realize they've always been here. Do you see what I'm saying? That
mm,
oneness doesn't go anywhere, right? So in my perspective, I was like, okay, and let me also tell you how I came to this conclusion.
mhm,
I was like, why is this world so big and us so small? That means God could have created a way smaller world for us. Why is it so vast to the degree I was like, okay, maybe it's not made for us only, to that degree. And then, um, sorry, just a second. I wanted to just go to this point where I thought that we are here to understand life, but
mhm,
due to our limited position, it's becoming clear to me that we're here for an act to
Mhm,
do something. Okay.
mm,
If sometimes having I understand non-duality. I've had moments where I've sat down on a rock in the middle of a river and I've been like, who am I? And my mind's given multiple answers. So I'm like, I'm none of my thoughts. How
mm.
could I be all these different answers to one thing, right? So anyways, what I'm telling you, this is the question I'm gonna ask. How can you know oneness? Who is knowing oneness? How can there be a concept if God is oneness, inconceivable? How can we uh, experience that inconceivableness, or are we inconceivable as well?
Mm.
Sorry, this was a lot. I just
No, it's okay.
said it. I mean, and any part of it you see, yeah.
Yeah. You can only truly know something if you become that thing. You can only truly know something if you become that thing. And it can be as simple as this. So I have an apple in front of me, right?
Hmm.
This apple, if you observe this apple long enough, um, what you'll find is that in the beginning you have all the layers of conditioning and memories linked to what that thing is. And that will be used to interpret what the apple is. And then you take it a step further, and then there's a sense of quietness now as you observe this apple.
Right,
And
right.
take it a step further, and at some point, there isn't someone observing the apple anymore. All there is the apple. Okay. And when all there is the apple, you are the apple essentially. Okay. And
Ah,
that,
okay.
and that level, um, I don't want to say focus. I'd say that really it's not about trying to train yourself to be able to see life in this way. It's more that it's a redoing the conditioning that is taking place. Okay. And in the same sense, when you talk about oneness, it's not about it's not about what do I do to understand oneness? How do I go about understanding oneness? How do I go about understanding God? How do I go about understanding the truth? To really know something, you've got to be that thing. And so it's it's observed to the extent where there is no one doing the observing anymore, and that's all there is.
Right, right. So a complete momentary presence.
Yes, you can put it that way. And there's different cultures, religions will have many different terms, many
Right.
different terms, right?
So is there during those walks, by the way, man, let me tell you something. Beethoven, all the greatest geniuses went for walks.
Mm.
Just so you know. But
Maybe I'm a genius now then.
yeah, man, yeah. Maybe somebody had to tell you. But anyways, what I'm saying is, was there an experience? Did you have a spiritual awakening of some kind? Um, and how do you perceive people now? Do you see everything as God? Do you see their individualism? Do you see when you see, let's say, somebody do something good and bad, does it mean nothing to you, or does it have meaning? Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm saying,
Yeah,
are you seeing separated dimensions, or is everything one being? Is only one being here in
yeah,
this world, or
it's
is there is there
it's
is
both
there a
seen. It's
what's
it,
that?
both of it is seen, right? So you asked me initially, did I have a spiritual awakening?
Right.
Uh, so so I'd say there was a highlighted moment or a turning point, an experience that can be sort of distinguished from the everyday experience. But I'd say there was very much also a sort of gradual undoing of that conditioning, which naturally allowed more of that presence to shine. To give you an analogy, is I think Alan Watts used this analogy. If you have a a body of water, if the surface of that body of water is very turbulent, you're not able to see into its depths. Whereas eventually, if you allow it to just be, it will settle, right? Now, exerting effort in the spiritual process is the equivalent of you trying to use your hands and, stop the water from moving and calm it down physically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All that does is introduce further turbulence, right? And further distortion. So so I'd say that that process of undoing is what allowed the surface of the water to sort of settle, and then eventually, over time, reality unfolded itself more and more. Okay. um and then one time I did have what could be described as a spiritual awakening, where it just completely opened up. And I remember my immediate response at the time was just laughter. I was just laughing at everything. um
Yeah,
Everything, it just seemed like everything was just a joke. I was taking everything so seriously, but really the truth is that it's not that serious. We are imposing this seriousness. We are making a claim on reality as is. Um,
right.
and so that's, in regards to your question about spiritual awakening. And then you asked me something else after that.
Mm.
Yeah, what
To be
was your
honest, my attention went to other thoughts to say.
Yeah,
You
yeah. So yeah, sorry. Yeah, so then you asked me about people, how I see people and how I see
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the
So
dimensions of people.
yeah, so in these moments, that's what introduced to me. Um You see, even saying that it was introduced to me implies that there's a me and then there's the reality, but it's all one, right? There is no true separation. However, when I refer to different objects, I will name these objects by the objects. So there's no difference to how I would previously conduct myself, and work my way through life. And that's because there's great utility in that. Okay. So there is this one infinite, endless expression of existence, which is one. But within that, you can go and say that there is many different expressions. Each human being is one expression, and an expression, you can say it's an expression of God or an expression of reality. Very similar to, if you have an ocean, you have millions of different waves on the ocean, and each wave can be unique in its size and shape, and the way it directs itself, but it's still part of the ocean, right? So all that's happened now is, okay, there is that surface of all these waves, and that's all I used to be able to see. But now there's a recognition of, hey, wait, this is an ocean. It's a vast, endless ocean, right? And that's the only difference. And it
Right,
doesn't,
right.
yeah, and it doesn't mean that, um it's a rediscovery or almost like a reminder, because that ocean was always there.
So can I interject here? So would
Mm.
it be saying that it's like, let's say people dualistically are a drop. They suddenly experience non-duality. They realize they're an ocean. They
Mm.
realize since God is the ocean, that means God is their total inconceivable self. That means I'm asking you, is God you as one being?
So so you've got
No, this might sound strange. I don't want to say is God you, like your ego or your idea, but I'm saying, is God everything that's moving here?
it cannot be any other way, because if it is any other way, then that means there's a separation between whatever is taking place and God, and that by definition will imply that God is not one.
Right, right.
Okay. So we steer away from saying that we are God and all of the likes, because that can, because as mentioned earlier, everything is interpreted uniquely. So that will 100% have, very, different and misguided interpretation of what what
Mhm.
that's trying to point to, right? But in essence, you know, we cannot be separate from God. If anything, even if you look at it Islamically, every like most Muslims are yearning to be closer to God, right? There is that element of closeness to God is there. And so they do this spiritual work. They do the fasting, they do the prayer, they do the du'as, they do all these different practices as a part of the religion to gain nearness to God. But really, all these practices are doing is they're taking off the layers of conditioning that are making you think that God is far from you. Okay,
Right, right.
that's
What? No, no, I completely understand. It's just that if it is one, does it matter if people know God is one? That means
okay.
religion says believe. Let's say, I totally know what you mean.
Mm.
Like you're being told to accept something and you don't have the experience for. But I'm saying if the experience is one, does it matter if they know?
It
This is
doesn't.
a crazy question. It just came to me.
It doesn't matter. No, it doesn't.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Mm.
Um, Previously, I thought it did because I see, family, friends suffer so much, and I can see that that suffering is born out of uh, the identification with
Yes.
their
Yes.
body, with their ideas, and I can see that suffering is born out of um, not seeing this essentially, right?
Mm. Mm.
Um, and so I felt compelled to tell them, hey, by the way, this isn't how it is. But it's if someone's not willing to know or recognize, or if you are pointing in a certain direction and someone's not willing to look in that direction, it's impossible for them to recognize, right? They've got to come at it at their own pace. They may or may not, and that's fine.
You're
Um,
right. You can't ask a seed to grow like as quick as a tree that's already grown.
yeah,
Something like that, right?
yeah.
So if I can share something.
Hmm.
So I I was yes, I was introduced to Islamic ideas, but at some point in my life, I was raised in Canada, and at some point in my life, um, I didn't know who I was. Okay, I realized I'm not being honest. I'm constantly thinking I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that. And then I reached a moment where I'm like, yo, I don't know. I don't know who I am. So this made me wonder about what is this self that has been acting as me this whole time. Okay. So I went down that rabbit hole. I got introduced to Vedanta. In Vedanta, they say you ask this question, who am I? This is like the secret algorithm. All the
Yeah,
gurus are saying, ask who am I? Now the question, the thing is, when you go to ask who is here or who you are, that's not an object or a subject.
hmm.
So this the idea of a self, how do you see that? Is that wrong for us to even consider ourselves?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's not
Not
about
wrong, but do you think it's incomplete or is it blindfolding us or something?
yes. So it's not about what's right or wrong, right? It's simply that if if your eyes are blurry, you get some glasses to see clearly, right? And so you being able to recognize that, wait, I've been lying to myself. I don't know who I am. I don't know what this is you recognizing that your eyes are blurry. And so now you're trying to reconcile with that, right? And it takes a great amount of sincerity and honesty to come to this. Because in some sense you have to bypass the conditioning that's been telling you who you are all this time as well, right? So
Mm.
it's not a but at the same time we cherish the uniqueness in the expressions. It's all one. So so we don't distinguish and say that this is right or wrong anymore, because that is creating so much separation, and it's introducing rigidity, and that's not the case, right? It is illusory if all you see, if there's a very deep identification with this sense that you are separate from reality. That is illusory, but illusions are also okay. But they do come with a caveat, suffering, right? You will suffer as though you are a separate identity, right?
Right.
But there is the recognition that you are not a separate identity, that all is one. Then whatever matters that, you know, would otherwise make you suffer are a lot more dissolved and diluted in that oneness, in that vast oneness. Okay. So there is a
Right.
lot less suffering. And if you look at, you know, how heaven is described in many different religions, heaven is described as this place that is abundant. It's ever abundant. It's never ending. It has no restrictions. And Islamically, all the things that, you know, Islam teaches you that you should refrain from, like alcohol and fornication and all of these sins, right? They are now abundantly available in heaven, um, and and there is no such thing as sinning. There is no such thing as suffering anymore, right? You do not suffer anymore, and that's really the main point here. You don't suffer anymore.
You don't identify with the suffering, you mean?
No, I'm just telling you how heaven is portrayed, you know,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
at least in the Islamic sense, that there's this never-ending place. It's ever abundant. Nothing's missing. There is no suffering. Okay. There is no pain, right? And that actually is are all things that come about because of deep identification as a separate self. And so when you don't view yourself as this small separate entity, you cannot help but view yourself as one, or you cannot help but just view oneness. And then all of a sudden now, there's nothing missing. Everything is abundant. There's just deep gratitude. There is no pain. Now, when I say that there is no pain, it's not it's it's non-identifiable pain. The pain is there, right? But it's recognized for what it is. It's a short-lived moment of suffering, and that's okay, you know? It's okay because in the vast oneness, a small um ripple of something that may otherwise be discomforting doesn't become the center of the focus anymore. Okay, something may not be going your way, but in that vast oneness, there isn't just your way, there are many different ways. And so it dissolves itself. The suffering is very short lived, or the suffering is almost immediately alleviated as it arises.
Right, right. You know, something I think about often is that dehumanization and humanization. And often in my lectures, I say oneness is a divine. Let's consider as the only divine, like what's there, your presence, but it's not human. That's my argument, right? So it's that's why I thought, like, why is it that certain religions are saying, yo, you know, you go ask about spirituality, they say it's the secret of God, or anything you say, they say it's blasphemy, right? So I'm kind of trying to see, like, how do you then how do you see purpose to your biological existence and your psychological experience? If everything is one, there is no need for to do anything. If there's no need to do anything, why are we being something? You
So
understand what I'm saying?
yeah,
Let me open this up a bit. Like in the, I see it, for example, if somebody says everything is oneness, I'll be like, yeah, in your inner realms, you can think you're an alien. You can think you're the world. You think the inner realms has freedom to shift. We can visualize a car flying, but in reality, a car can't fly. So
mm,
our mind has permissions to dehumanize us. You see what I'm saying? Our
yeah,
mind can dehumanize us.
yeah.
So my question is, are we here to be human, or are we here to realize, as for example Swami Krishnananda says, religion is God remembering himself? It's not about people at all. We're not the point here.
Yeah.
God is remembering himself.
Yeah.
Or are
It's
we the point? Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm trying to.
absolutely, yeah. It's all it's part of the play. It's just all part of the play. Um and it's there's nothing wrong um with with being human, right? It's here now, so you play the part, right? And and that's
Yeah.
really all you can say. And actually the quote of religion is God remembering himself. That's, you know, that's actually beautiful way of putting it. You know, God wants to be known.
Right, right.
And
Let me tell you, the thing is, I'll share something personal.
mm,
So I started giving these talks, like you said, you would go on walks, right? I would go on walks and hold my phone in my hand and just talk into it.
mm,
That's how it started. But at some point, let me tell you this, like I came to this perspective where I'm like, okay, I have free will. This free will is moving in this world. I'm making decisions about reality, but I did not create this world. There are infinite viewpoints to look at this world. You could look at it. I mean, non-duality kind of filters it, but I'm saying there are literally infinite ways to look at this life. And I reached, this is honestly this year, man. I reached this point where I was like, I really don't know how to choose out of infinity. Okay, I came to this view where I looked at so many, just like you were saying, people have different things, different like conditioning and all of that. So I came to this point where if you ask me what is truth, what is the soul, I won't tell you non-duality. I will tell you my honesty has
mm,
made me realize it's unknown. My
mm,
whole life, I thought I was a known self in a knowable world, and I thought everything was set out. And when I realized, whoa, 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 I'm an unknown being in an unknown world, and this is the event.
mm.
You see what I'm saying? So I've actually reached this point where I'm just watching the unknown pretty much every
Yeah,
day.
and really the question at this point is, are you okay with that?
That's the thing, because the me that wants to be okay is a self-simulation that changes the moment my attention finds new information. So if I identify as Amin knows truth, tomorrow I might not, like, my view of myself might be different.
Yeah,
The one who believed in that truth is gone, man. Like the belief could be the same, but you're a different person the next day. So the belief is not the same.
yeah.
Do you see?
But that's the premise of every spiritual practice is this, even non-duality. When you ask yourself, when you ask yourself, who am I? It's not about the answer. It's about the underlying recognition that you don't know what's going on. And
Yes.
that is an introduction to a certain level of openness to reality, right? And so people who actually follow the non-duality, they ask these deep questions, these self-inquiry questions of who am I, what is all this, right? um and then they are confronted with this, damn, like I don't know what's going on. And then they are confronted with this openness all of a sudden, because there is a deep sincere recognition that they don't know. But that that can also introduce fear, right? And so immediately it's closed off again, like, no, I am this little me. I'm gonna wake up, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that, and I like this and I like that, you know. But really, that's always been the case. There's always been this mystery or this unknowingness. Okay.
Right.
So that is not something you can escape from. You can try to escape from it, which will introduce suffering.
It's everywhere, man.
But
You can't.
it's always the case. And so now the question is, am I okay with that? Can I be okay with this? Right? And and really spirituality, all it is just the recognition of what is, right?
Yeah.
And being okay with that. And it doesn't mean necessarily that you are in agreement or disagreement, because
That's profound.
agreement and disagreement implies that there is, you know, this separate entity that is trying to change reality. It's just that this unknowingness, this mystery, is so vast, and to my core, you know, I don't know, right? And then are we okay with that? And if there
Mhm.
is this okayness, then that's it. You're free. Like it's just freedom. It's just peace. That's all there is. It's just the sense of isness
Mhm.
or the sense of being, right?
So can I bring this to a very important topic, right? The topic of authority. Now, this doesn't mean like a conceptual authority, but how do you feel there's an authority beyond you, or do you feel the authority is everywhere, so we're kind of like authorized to experience it at any time? Do you know what I'm saying? Is it
Mm,
because there is? I'll tell you this, man. I'm not a. I would say I have more of a heart of a Muslim than a mind of a Muslim. You
mhm,
know, and now there's moments when, at any time I feel impure, or whatever, there's moments where I go, and when I go stand to pray, I have a knee problem, so I pray on my bed
mm,
sometimes. You
yeah.
know, and then when I stand there on the prayer mat, I have this feeling due to that unknown. We were saying that unknown self.
Mm,
I have this feeling, I don't know why, that I feel so insignificant, but I feel I'm in the presence of something so significant that
mm,
I start tearing up sometimes.
mhm, mhm,
And it's not even logical or reason, it's more just I am so small, but is there something big? Do you understand? Like, is there the presence of something big, right? In those moments when I feel my ego doesn't know or can't see as it is, I I call for the higher, do you know?
mhm,
But there are also moments where I've done something and I felt it was not authorized, and the repercussions came right after. I'll give you an example. Um, I was giving these talks at some point, right? And I was saying something specific in them. One day I get a dream, and the dream is hellish, man. I've had two dreams, bro. One dream, very heavenly dream. One dream, very hellish. Okay. I see this hellish dream, wake up in a panic at the middle of the night, and there's the Quran right beside me, beside like my table.
mm,
I open it, and it says something in the lines of, "Who do you think you are telling, trying to save?" Sorry, I don't know if it's exact. I might be getting it wrong,
mm,
but the idea was like, "Who are you to go and save gods? Like, go enlighten God's people, right? When God has wiped civilizations before instantly." To a point where I understand, man, you're hearing this all non-dualistically. You're like, yo, get out of the story, you know.
no, it's
but
fine. No.
but I'm just saying that in just my real experience, you said as is. In my real experience, I feel I cannot know all of it. So if I am under the impression that I am knowing all of it, then I am limiting, like the idea of God. Do you understand? It's like saying, if God is inconceivable, how can I believe in the idea of it?
Mm,
Idea is conceivable.
mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Does that come?
absolutely, absolutely. And and I sometimes have these conversations with some of my friends, about praying to God, right? And I ask them, what are you praying to? And they say, I'm praying to God. And then I say, okay, um, so how do you know that the God you're praying to is the same as the God of, your other fellow Muslim is praying to? Because fundamentally, all you can perhaps do is formulate an idea of God. And each person's idea is going to be uniquely different. Part of the idea can be the description that God is inconceivable and that God cannot be known, or whatever the case is, right? But in essence, 2 billion Muslims, or whatever the number is, um, are they all praying to their own unique idea of God? Because it cannot be any other way, you know? And so who's right and who's wrong in this case? Doesn't
So
there need to be a consistency across the board of what God is? Now, if if what I'm saying is true, that there needs to be a consistency, that consistency of what God is cannot be an idea, you know? And that's what one of the main initial things of what the introduction of Islam has brought is the demolition of idols, right? Because
Right, right.
idol worshipping is it's an idea that is, encapsulated into physical form, right? A statue or whatever it is. And
Yeah.
so that's what Islam has wiped away. But you now have a unique idea of God. So if you truly want to um, be honest and sincere about it, you will look at this and question that idea and say,
Mhm.
actually, I don't know. I don't know what God is, right? And that once again reintroduces this openness, reintroduces this sincerity, and reintroduces this honesty, right? And honesty is really the path towards truth. Okay, being honest across the board is what leads to the truth.
Right, but here's the challenge, man. Somebody could be in a dishonest culture and think they're being honest,
Yeah,
right? Or they could be in it, they could think like the most evil person on the planet could be like, yo, man, I'm honestly being evil. Like I'm being super honest with, let's say, I mean, I'm just saying that, um, but let me, I just had this thought arose in my mind that I feel, uh, so would this mean that you've experienced life, the insight that as is a quality, so it's no longer an individual analysis for you?
yes, it's
The
an
actual
inherent
individual
quality.
analysis is not primary anymore because most people are individually thinking, I'm this, I'm in a world this individual, and then they come to the collective perspective, and and then sometimes they even identify with collective stories. But I get the sense that your experience is not like, how do you see, do you understand what I'm saying? I'm trying to see, like, do
No,
you,
there is, look, there is,
is there such a thing as thinking anymore?
yes, of course, there is thinking, there is
Okay.
individualistic thoughts, there are opinions still, these all exist, but these opinions that I claim ownership of, and this thinking that I say it's my thinking, right, is no different to this apple, right?
Yeah.
And is no different to other objects that are flying around in existence. Okay. So the value metric of that is given towards thoughts isn't higher than other objects. It's just an object, right? And it doesn't have as much of a claim and an ownership over the perspective of what's taking place right now.
Right. You
Okay.
said.
But
Mhm.
but it's you do have the choice to go ahead and play the role of being this person and following the thought and following the opinion, and that's all okay.
Right, right. Because it's one, then there is no accident in some sense.
Yeah, it's
So
it doesn't, yeah, it's okay, but um you know
let me just share something.
mm,
Sometimes I have this view. Let's say that you are a very advanced, multidimensional, in all dimensions, advanced being, right?
mhm,
Multidimensional being. And then suddenly there's this insight from religion, like, be a human being that does something specific human action.
mhm.
Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm trying to see, like, the significance of us being human in the presence of the divine. Because if we really start saying everything is divine, it dissolves our individual role. Do
Okay,
you
I'll,
understand what I'm saying? That means, imagine, everybody says, I'm one. Why do I need to pray? Why do I need to read a book? Why do I need to do anything?
yeah,
It's all there already. There's nothing to look for. Do you see what I'm saying?
yeah. So in another way to rephrase a question is, on the religious terms, is why would God create humans and all of this if God is God, right?
I mean, I don't think we can know why. See, if there if it's I mean, it's inconceivable, but I mean, we can't know an inconceivable being's will.
Look, so existence.
Do you feel I'm still caught into the ideas of it?
No, 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 no.
Okay.
It's that's not what I was about to talk about. So look,
Mm,
existence and reality as we know it is one, right? So from a religious narrative, God created everything, right? And God is complete. God is ever abundant. God doesn't miss anything. God doesn't have partners, right? God is just one. Another way of saying oneness is it's all of it, right? To give a very simple example, if you have a pizza, right? It's one pizza, but the moment you cut a slice out of it, it's not one whole pizza anymore, right? Um, and so in the same way, this is what oneness is pointing towards the holistic completeness of existence and reality and all of it, right? And even the unreality that isn't seen, right? So so when it comes so therefore when you look at, let's say, experience, right? God in its completeness is capable of all experiences, right? There is no experience that God isn't able to do or have, let's say, right? So however, the question now is, does that satisfy the completeness? Because surely God would only truly be complete if God can also experience things that God cannot experience. Or to rephrase that to you, if God
all knowing, right?
yes, so if God is all knowing, to truly satisfy the completeness of the all knowingness, God must also not know everything. For it to truly be a holistic reality, a holistic oneness of the matter. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. It's just I have a bit of this might be a bit of a humanized view on this, but what
That's
do you
okay.
think it is? Okay.
Yeah.
So in one of my lectures, I was saying, imagine there's a, let's say, like 1,000 years from now, there's a scientist, next level scientist. He
Mhm,
invents an android, a robot that looks like a human.
mhm,
Okay. He has an apprentice named Lucy. Okay. He
mhm,
has the fallen angel is his apprentice. The inventor is the role of just the archetype of God.
mhm,
This inventor creates an android, puts it in a room with mirrors, right? And the android is left there alone in the
mhm,
room. Okay, appears in a world, you appear on a rock in the middle of nowhere, spinning in the middle of nowhere. So the android appears in this room with mirrors, and suddenly the son of the inventor, or I don't know, somebody who, a messenger of the inventor, comes to, what do you call it? Comes to, uh, for example, comes into the room and gives the android a book. Okay. And simultaneously, the inventor wants to check his invention. And he's like, yo, I'm going to send my apprentice named the fallen angel to go and try to make my invention act against its software,
mhm,
right? So the android is waking up, realizing it's hardware. Yo, I'm hardware, thinking, yo, did this hardware appear from the room? Did this hardware suddenly just, from after millions of years, was this android just put in the room suddenly? Do you know? But then let's say the apprentice comes and says, yo, android, forget your software. You were from this room. You're not. And the whole time, the inventor is looking from the mirrored walls, being like, yo, does my invention follow its program? Does my invention follow its innate software? Do you know? Which I would say, if to me, like you said something, sorry, man, I'm saying a lot here, but you said something in one of your lectures that what if non-duality is entering Islam? I
mhm,
don't know if you remember in one of your talks, you said that.
mm. Yeah,
Um,
Yeah,
I'm
so
trying to say, like, is that, are you left with faith? Is non-duality the faith they're talking about? Are you left with is the android left just being like, yo, it's the software. I don't know. I didn't create this room.
so
I didn't create
yeah,
myself. So I got to just have faith in the software.
so let's just yeah, so let's just look at that. Now, you
Sure.
mentioned before it's a humanistic way of looking at it because it's almost like God is now an entity that is trying to,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, do experiments on you, right? To see what happens or whatever, right? Out of curiosity, right? But it defies the description of what, Islamically God is known as, which is that God is all knowing, right? So let's just go back to what I was trying to say earlier. God is
Sure.
God is all knowing, right? To truly satisfy its all knowingness, right? God must also be able to know what it's like to not know.
Does God need to know what it is to not know?
It's not a matter of need, right?
Okay.
It's not a matter of need. It's
In order to be complete, it has to include the unknown
yes,
and the,
yes,
right.
exactly, right? So if God is truly all knowing, therefore God must also know what it's like to not know.
Right, right. But
Okay.
this,
And so,
okay.
yeah. And so what in reality doesn't know?
Let me, like, can I say something here? I wanted to say
Uh-huh.
it is said that God is inconceivable to us,
Yeah,
correct?
sure,
But
sure.
I don't think it necessarily means it's inconceivable to itself.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So, for example, I remember coming across Vedic mythology. These
Hmm.
guys see that we're at the bottom of this mountain. There's seven upper levels, lower worlds. The highest upper level is called Brahma Loka, where you don't reincarnate anymore. And it's God's level, like God's room, right? When you've become like like God's neighborhood. I don't know how to say it, do you know? So they see that a sort of kind of like, reaching a point where you don't reincarnate as a being, but
Hmm.
God is there. You understand what I'm saying? Like an ant can't conceive human beings. If you say, imagine a human being gives a book to an ant and says, hey, ant, there's something beyond you. Worship it, right? Imagine the ant says, I feel the world is me. I feel that I'm just by non-dualistically experiencing the world. There is no greater human. There
Hmm.
is no something like that. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm trying to say, does non-duality mean there is no greater being? Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I don't know
Yeah.
if it's
Yeah. So all there is being. That's what non-duality means. Non-duality means that all there is being.
mhm.
Okay. There is no other being. All there is being. That's what non-duality is pointing towards.
Okay, so let me ask you this. After non-duality, is there anything else? For example, when you see like
It could be like
Muslims,
a bunch of
really-
fireworks and stuff. You never
yeah.
know, but you have to check it out, you know?
You know, I a part of me deeply when you said it's all being, you know, I totally understand that, man, and it could be due to my limitation that I'm trying to make sense of the unknown as a limited being, do you know? But sometimes I also feel we're like antennas, and if we have just our own, like you might not realize it, but non-duality for some people can become a belief.
Hmm.
And even oneness can become a belief. Some people say, I love everybody, but they don't help anybody. Somebody can say, I'm this, but not necessarily be it, right? I don't know, man. I'm struggling to understand constantly the human and the divine, and why we have imagination, why we have intellect, why we have an ability to make a decision separate from the creator, right? Because some people from the religious view, it's wrong that you have become separated from that oneness, right?
Mhm.
But inevitably everything returns to God. So I don't know, man. You want to help me out here? My mind's getting blown.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So yes, so you have the ability to make um decisions, okay? But in the non-dual perspective, right? There is no one there to make these decisions. The decisions are made, okay? And both of them are correct. Like both of these perspectives are correct. There is actually no one doing the speaking here, right? But
Mhm,
there is this guy called Hassan doing the speaking. They're both correct,
mhm.
okay? And 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 then again, what is taking place, what I see is happening, is you are trying to understand using the same tools or intellect or qualities that you'd use to understand other matters in the materialistic reality, okay?
Right,
If
right.
whether it's a mathematical equation or a scientific theory or something like that, right? You're using the same approach.
No, 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 no. I'm not. Right, right. I see. I'm not trying. See, yeah, yeah. I'm not this person who I'm like, yo, I'm trying to find a formula for God, or I'm trying to find an equation for God. I'm not like that. I'm just trying to understand the relationship of a being in an unknown world with its experience, if its experience is multifaceted. Okay, because the same conviction one can have that this is non-dual. You go speak with an atheist and they will say, yo, man, it's just this. How could it be anything else? Right.
Mm,
So I'm kind of saying, is there do you know what solipsism means? That means your reality is the only truth, right?
mhm.
How would you see non-duality? I don't know. I'm trying to see like,
Yeah, it's the
is
non-duality
it, if
is
you are not you, then what do you do?
what do you do?
If you are not you, what do
Yeah.
you do here? That's what I'm trying to tell you.
But that question becomes redundant because if you are not you, there is no one doing anymore. There is no doing anymore.
No, 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 there is something happening. It doesn't mean you're a human doer. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean you're an ideal, but it's still
Yes,
something's
but that
moving.
something that's happening is the same as the clouds that are moving in the sky. But you don't seem to be very concerned with the clouds in the sky. Why aren't you frustrated about the shapes and the colors of the clouds, right? And that's the
Right.
same thing. It's the same thing. Like you there's no one doing this, right? And that becomes okay. It's observed and it's just flown with. There's
You're
just an
right.
underlying,
Right.
there's just because look, whether there is a frustration about how things should or shouldn't be, or what should or shouldn't be done, right? Whether that frustration is there or not, whatever is done anyway. Whatever takes place anyway. Okay?
Mhm.
So the constant interjection that you are this separate entity to try and steer reality in a certain way is illusory. It's illusory. But
Yeah,
that
it's real to yourself only because others can't even see it, right? Others can't
exactly.
even see how I'm like, being myself in the right way.
Yeah, but it's not only because others can't see it, right? It's that shouldn't be recognized because of others, because even
Mm.
others, that is also a an illusory concept. the you and the me and the this and the that.
Right. If you don't have a self, then there is no others, right? Because the self and the world is the basic
Yes.
separation.
Now
Like the
it
way we
just
dual.
is.
So let me ask you this: how are we dual then? So let's say I don't know what non-duality is, right? From duality, like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, how do you see duality? What does duality mean to you? This is crazy, but
Duality, yeah, the duality is still an expression. It's still the case.
of what though? It's non-dual.
Yes, that's also true.
So do you understand what I'm saying? I'm saying
Mm.
if
Why
um
does it have to be one or the other?
one or the other, because I think it's paradoxical.
And
Right? Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why.
okay,
If I'm not a self, who is being non-dual? Who is experiencing non-dual?
if I'm not a self, who is?
Yeah, yeah. If I'm not dual, if I'm not dual
Are
first,
you implying
how
that
can I know not?
non-duality is an experience?
Sorry.
So are you implying that non-duality is an experience?
I'm saying non-duality is the context. Doesn't matter if we experience it or not. Whatever you do, it's there, right?
Hmm.
I think that's how you're talking about it. But I'm
Yes.
saying, like, if it's okay, I'm pretty much saying, if they say everything started from God, everything returns to God. If God is an inconceivable being, in the middle we're conceivable. So does this mean we're just inconceivable beings here, bro? There is no, the conception is illusory because you can't say non-duality means good and evil are an illusion. That's what it means. It means they're not real. Okay. That's my understanding, of course. When somebody says something is non-dual, that means you're not seeing good
It's
and
not,
bad
look,
people.
it's not that good and evil aren't real. Um, it's that good and evil are recognized for what they are. They are they are perhaps concepts or ideas or definitions of certain actions and happenings in existence, right? It doesn't matter. It's not real. We're not trying to we're not trying to decipher what is real or not real. Okay,
Mhm.
we're just trying to recognize what is. That's all it is. Okay,
Right. But
because
how can you oh yeah, I get it. Because you are it, you notice it instantly, you're being it, so there's no analysis or anything else
yes,
necessary.
the analysis becomes redundant,
Mhm.
right? It just is. Okay.
Hey man, if
And
analysis is redundant, should I turn off the stream?
no,
Okay. No, I'm kidding.
absolutely not. It's
Yeah. No, I understand. I totally understand how you
yeah.
meant that.
So it's yeah. So it just is,
Mhm.
and then after that comes the analysis anyway. So think about it in or not, look at it and recognize that the sense of being or this isness, right?
Mhm.
Is primary. It's essential. It's more essential than the thinking and the deductions and the analysis, right? And so then an analysis becomes just another happening, just like any other happening. And I go back to saying earlier, right? Why aren't you so concerned about the shape of this tree? Why aren't you so concerned about the shape of this cloud? As you know, as you are concerned with the analysis of these things. Okay. So really, non-duality is a is the recognition of being, the recognition that there is a recognition taking place. Another way, awareness of awareness,
Mhm.
right? And that's all it
Awareness.
is. Yeah. That's all it
Right,
is.
right. And that awareness is not, you're right. That awareness is not like a self that can, know that so it's just a quality pretty
Yeah,
much,
what
right?
comes before that separate self is the awareness. If that awareness wasn't there, there wouldn't be any conception or the recognition that there is this separate self, or with its opinions and the analysis and the thinking and so on. Hmm.
Right, right. So, um, one thing I'm still trying to, I haven't asked this yet. How do you experience your imagination? Is it visual? Is it sentences? When you, for example, I'll give you myself as an example. I write a lot of science fiction. Sometimes when I walk or I'm going about the day, out of nowhere, I see like a film preview,
Mhm.
just a scene, like a film scene in my mind. And then I go write that down and I write these different chunks and then I try to connect them into a story. But I'm asking you, um, how do you experience your mind? How do you experience your imagination? Is Yeah.
Mm.
Or
Yeah,
if somebody asks you, what is imagination, or how do you, yeah,
yeah. I guess imagination is within the same realm of thoughts and memories.
right. So you're still the awareness, noticing
Yeah,
the
of
stuff
course.
coming and going.
You cannot be anything other than that.
Um, right, right. But do you understand? It's kind of like you're saying we're all energy, true. You can only be energy, right? But the energy is still changing and having forms. It's like two dimensions, right? It's like two sides of a coin. One side of the coin, everything non-dual truth, presence, energy, right? But on the other side of the coin, do you see what I'm saying? It's like the energy is changing from form to form, right?
So sorry, so what are you referring to as energy?
I'm saying, um, I'm pretty, I'm trying to say like, uh, I don't know how to collect my thoughts right now, man. But I think where I was going with it was in regards to non-duality and on the other side of the coin being dualism. Oh yeah, I remember. If I say everything is like non-dual and energy, that's true. Yeah, everybody's energy, right? But it doesn't. Do you understand? It's not like an answer. It's not. It's just an observation. It's
Hmm.
just an observation that you are an observer, an unknown observer experiencing your body change, your thoughts come and go, right? But some part of me feels there's something with the duality. I don't know, man. Some part of me feels pure non-duality is incomplete. I don't know why I feel that.
Pure non-duality is
That
incomplete.
means that means if I feel if a being doesn't if you if you are not if you are not human here, um you don't know why you're here. I don't know why I have some sort of feeling like this.
If you are not human here, you don't know why you are here.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's like, it's honestly, man, this might be difficult for me to articulate. It's more like an emotion, but I feel there is the realization of non-duality is equivalent to nothing, nothing, awareness of everything. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm saying
There's
it's
nothing
not
to gain.
changing. What is it changing?
Yeah, 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 it's there's nothing to gain.
Okay.
Absolutely. There's nothing to gain. And I mentioned this before. The it's an undoing of the conditioning that's taking place, right? Yeah, there's no
Oh my
change.
God. You're saying it's not adding or finding something. It's
Yes,
something that's
it's
just
not something, it's not
stop doing
something.
something and you realize it, right? Is that the view
Repeat
you're
what you
saying?
said, sorry. Repeat
You,
what you said.
what you're saying similar to how Rumi says it's not your task to seek love, but get rid of all the barriers you've made against it?
Yes. Yes.
Is it something similar? Oh,
Yes.
I see, man. So, bro, I've been giving you a headache with these questions.
No, 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 no. It's okay. No, it's
Yeah.
no. This is good. This is nice. Um, yes. So it's you're not creating anything, right? Um, and you are not making something new. Um, you are not. It's the biggest struggle with this is that it's so simple that it's overlooked. You know, it just is. It all just is. That's the simplest way to really put it.
Yeah, it's
Okay?
simpler than ourself.
Yes. So when you try to perceive it with the separate self, it just goes, all over the place, all over the place.
You made me realize something incredible right now, man. I totally see what you're saying. I'm using myself to
Uh-huh.
try to understand the non-dual self.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? I'm using the self to understand something that's more than the self, but how can I if I'm using the self?
Hmm.
Everything's being it's coming back to the self. So man, I'll get to, is there more you want to share about this? Or I
No,
had one more
that's
question to ask you.
yeah, go ahead.
Um, okay, so first of all, man, uh, very insightful so far. But one question, and just to confirm, is your imagination visual? I didn't get the answer to that. You just said things come
And
and go. Visual, do
can
you
be,
see it? Do you see sentences, language, or do you see, like, when somebody speaks to you, do you see a film in your mind, or do you see sentence structure?
I guess it's a bit of both. It can be a bit of both.
Oh,
There's
a
no,
bit of,
yeah, there's no one thing.
okay, okay. For me, man, it converted from seeing language to becoming incredibly cinematic, to a point where when I speak to someone, the way I remember it is by seeing it turn into a film, to that degree, right? But anyways, so I guess I figured that out. It's both. The last question: what message in a bottle would you send or give to the future generations, all the unborn people who will enter this world, right? What message in a bottle will you give them? And I understand that's kind of hard when it's non-dual, but
No, so at the moment, what there is to say, I guess, and it might change if you ask me next week. Um, but at the moment, I'd say it's just two words, and that's just be. Just be.
wow, just be.
Yeah, because it's when I had this spiritual awakening, um, it was all such a big mess, and I was it was the separate self trying to understand it all. Okay. Um, and with this whole mess, it eventually just, it was so turbulent that that there was some sort of surrender. It's like I give up. Like that's it. I've had enough. I don't want this anymore. It was a very difficult and turbulent, intense moment. And then all of a sudden, when I gave it all up, when I just surrendered and completely just submitted, right? It just it was so clear, and I remember just saying, "Oh, just be, right? Just be." And that's it, right?
You can't see it now, man, but I'm smiling, when you were saying just be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's all it is, right? Like everything else is just an additional complexity, a manufacturing uh, of ideas and conditioning and there's just so much, right? To deal with and to try and figure out and sort out. And really all you're trying to get to is to your to rest in your sense of being, which by the way is something that you do by definition anyway. But it's just to recognize that that is what you are doing, that that is the most essential and primary truth that is taking place now.
Wow, man, this is I feel like I'm glowing right now.
If only we could
Oh,
see.
it's the sun, man. The sun's hitting me. um, Hassan, this was incredibly insightful. Um, I have a feeling that many many people actually need to hear hear you. But I will also give you a warning, man, that there is a new age non-dual community where their oneness equates extraterrestrials and all of this, so in the future you might see that, But anyways, man, thank you for your time. It was incredible.
Absolutely. No, thank you for having me. I mean, I really enjoyed this conversation.
All right, man. Thank you. Take care, son. Blessings.
Take care. Bye bye.